Over there? We're good? We're good. Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Mundelein Elementary School District 75 board meeting for Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. It is 7 p.m. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Holly.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Carl. Here. Pinsky is not present. Gallegos, not present. Finger Hut here. Village here.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Yay. First item up on the agenda is citizens' comments. Is there anyone here? Hi, Ashley.
How are you?
Good. Is there anyone online that wish to address the board? If you would like to do so, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, click the raise hand icon.
There is one person, but not yet.
We'll wait for just a moment. If you'd like to address the board, please click the raise hand icon. Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Next on the agenda is the Board of Education comments. Anyone have any comments for the board?
I'm gonna read the code of conduct.
Okay.
We are now on the 8th code of conduct. This code reads, I will be sufficiently informed about and prepared to act on the specific issues before the board and remain reasonably knowledgeable about local, state, national, and global education issues. Author goes on to say, this is a tough one. It means to keep your ears open to the news, read the journals provided, study the pre-board meeting packets, and try to understand the more complex issues like school finance, taxation, and the changing legislation that affects your students and district. Is being a school board member a full-time job? In a way, yes. I just want to add to that a nice friendly reminder to read your IASB updates as they come in. You stay up to date on those. A lot of times it goes hand in hand with the Friday updates and just helps you stay on top of everything. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any comments? I would like to just make one comment. I want to publicly congratulate the teachers and the other staff and students that did the Newsies, the Carl Sandburg musical this year. I went on, I think it was Saturday night, and just had such a great time. It's so great that now it's become a tradition. Like, you know, the first one was fantastic and everything, but now it's been happening like year after year. So that's just fantastic to see. And I told Mrs. Gupta and Rita that I was really impressed with this year's show. I thought they did a really excellent job. It's a little more challenging of a piece than some of the other Disney stuff they did, and really exciting to see that. So congratulations to them. Mark, please convey my congratulations to them because they did a really great job.
And the 16 MG students. Yes.
Right, and the MG students, yeah, too. Yeah.
Second time we got to involve MG
Yeah.
students in it.
It was really entertaining. I was really impressed with what they did with the show. So thank you for all the hard work that they did for that. Okay, any other comments before we move on? Okay, next up is District 75 report, and the first up is the superintendent's office. We ready to do that, or? Okay. Or do we need to wait? No.
Evening, I am not Kevin. Kevin will be here shortly, so I'm just going to get everything started. I believe the first piece up is the mid-year update. And I don't know who the first person is to provide that. Stephanie? Okay. Have Stephanie come on down and get us started.
Good evening. I'm Stephanie Drake, principal at Washington. Thank you for having us tonight. We're excited to give you an update. I'm going to be honest. This is week 3 of this really raspy voice. I'm hoping it holds out just for my like 6 minutes. So we are aspiring at Washington to live with Eagle Pride. I'm working on my code, lead the pack thing. And our big focus right now is elevating learning for all. So our first celebration we're going to talk about is Orton Gillingham. Our consultant is Stacy Kassoff. She is with IMSE and is our Orton Gillingham trainer. She gets to come every other month. We've been really lucky because she's been coming for 3 and 4 day stretches at a time. And our celebration is she's in every classroom coaching on the spot, which is great, real life professional development for our teachers. The students are reading and writing every day. It's super fun to watch them try out their new skills and strategies. If you have a little one, you watch them pound out words. Pig, that word says pig, that word says pig. And you see them do it all the time, whether they're writing or reading. That's super fun. And then we've reached the level where all of our students are applying what they're learning, which is really fun because now you're seeing it. So they may write the word without the magic E, but then when they read it, they'll say to you, no, it needs something at the end to make the vowel say its name. And then they come back to it. So it's fun to watch that growth process learn. We also took advantage of having Stacy here to do our first parent education night. So we're beginning to try to get our parents to know these strategies so that they too help their kids at home when they're practicing their reading. What are our next steps? Our next steps are to work on decodable text, getting decodable text in our classrooms. What is a decodable text? Decodable text is a book that almost every word in the book can be sounded out. So it doesn't have the rule breakers or the vowel teams that they haven't learned in it yet. So they are texts that the kids can really practice sounding out. And then we are going to continue our parent ed pieces so that our families also can help practice. Next slide, please. Fonética is the Spanish translation of foundational skills. So it is our Spanish piece that's going with it. The sad thing is there is not a great Spanish phonics published resource out there. So we are using everything we know, and we are learning and building our own and blending it using our dual language skills, our Spanish skills, what we know about phonics instruction and good reading instruction, and building our own as we build. So that is where we are with it. We're seeing lots of cross-linguistic connections happening in our dual language classrooms. That's when both languages come together. It could be through a cognate, but it could also be when the teacher says something in Spanish, the child answers in English, the teacher responds in Spanish, then the child may come back with what we call code switching, with a mix of English and Spanish happening. It's honoring both languages and how they're the same and how they're different, and that they're all part of the child's language. So our next steps are building a resource drive for our dual language teachers. Our goal is to have one that is as extensive as our Orton Gillingham drive. Pretty ambitious goal, but we're hoping to get there. And then later I'm going to tell you about our ESSER program, which we are working on to really focus in on some of our data needs. Next slide, please. Our school-wide consultant is Pat Pollock. Our teachers have built a great relationship with both of our consultants over the past few years. And Pat visits every other month also. She too gets to be in classrooms doing hands-on coaching. She also does PD for teachers through our teacher meetings. Our students refer to her as their favorite author because they've read some of the things that she has written. So they think they're pretty special that they know Miss Pat, the author. She also did a huge kickoff with for second graders with Writers Workshop. The big celebration is reading and writing is all over Washington right now. Our next step are to use our data to build out our small group instruction. We had some great data meetings today where we began to really analyze the data and let it know, find out what it's really telling us. And then to use that data to plan for their next steps. So our huge celebration through our workshop model is the reading and writing that you see in every classroom all over Washington. And really, our plan is to stay the course. Keep it up. Our library is going to be building in a student author section where students can put their books in the library and kids can look at them while they're in there. So that will foster the notion of all of us are readers and writers. Next slide, please. Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment is our major reading assessment. The real celebration at hand here is we have multiple data points for all of the students at Washington now using Fontes and Pinnell. Fontes and Pinnell is a very extensive assessment with lots of information. So our teachers are working on building their capacity so that they can use all of that information to really dig deep into what are the children's reading habits telling us? What are the next steps? How can we build from that and all of those pieces? So that is where we are with our F&P benchmark assessment. Thank you. And then finally, we have our ESSER after school program that we are getting ready to start in first week of March. We chose at Washington to focus on our first and second grade dual students for this after school program, because that is where our data says we have the biggest area of need. So these students, we're going to work on helping them grow in both languages through fun games and practice skills and daily reading. The second grade dual students, we dug deeper into their data and we found that we have a cluster of students who are from our English speaking homes that have broken the code to reading in English, but are missing the vocabulary to be at the same level in Spanish. So those students are going to have a more in-depth vocabulary practice time during their after school program. And we are just super excited to help meet the goal of increasing students in IER that are achieving the MEADS level. So we're focusing on those students that are approaching. I'm going to hand it over to Tanya Fergus.
Thanks.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
You made it.
I made it. There you go.
There you go.
Hi, I'm Tanya Fergus. I'm the principal at Mechanics Grove School. Our mission statement is that we are inspiring kind leaders and building, preparing for bright futures. And we are leading the pack at MG. I just had a really weird moment because my very first year as a principal, 16 years ago, it comes full circle because Lisa Yaffe's here and she was a parent and our board president at the time, and Chief was our chief. So it's kind of neat coming full circle here. So we are ready to talk about Mechanics Grove and our growth this year and our celebrations. OG is something, Orton Gillingham is a little bit newer at Mechanics Grove than it is at Washington because we were part of the rolling it up process. So we were able to, a couple years ago, start really doing the full training with teachers and implementing it into our classrooms. And we're really excited that this year has been that first year to have the kids coming with that common language and the common procedures and the background throughout the whole building. Last year, it was those third graders coming up from Washington, and that was great. But this year, the teachers are just expressing how much the kids are feeling confident, how much they're really enjoying it. We do not have as many students going P-I-G, pig, or ig, because we have students who are actually decoding words based on the vowel consonant blends, and if it's a closed syllable or an open syllable, and a whole nother level. So you can see on the bottom picture there a student figuring that out on one of our dry erase tables. Stacy Kassoff that Stephanie mentioned is also our OG consultant, and she has also been supporting our staff with what exactly PD should look like. It's embedded, it's ongoing, it's in the classroom, it's coaching, it's direct PD, it's modeling, it's co-teaching. all of those parts of it are things that she's doing every single day when she's at MG. One of the other great things is that she's really helped support our newer teachers who didn't go through the original 2-week summer training a couple summers ago. So that's been great for her to make sure that she's kind of closing that gap and making sure everyone's caught up. In regards to support and improvement, we plan to continue with OG and continue with the training. Stephanie talked about the drive, the resources all on the drive, and that is something that we are also making sure that all staff understand, have access to, and are able to utilize at any given time, because it's changing quite often. And that's a great thing, but we want to make sure staff are used to it as well. Next slide, please. All right, our school-wide consultant is a blend right now. We have Bridget Nolan, who's been here, and I talked about her before. We're lucky next month, we have Erica Denman, who's been at the middle school, coming to support MG next month to fill in a little gap, so we make sure we have the continued ongoing support. All of our consultants have been great. Bridget has been coming 2 days usually at a time. I know we talked about how that's been working, and it's nice because she has a continued time with them. She'll spend one day maybe supporting them in their collab time that they have per their contract, and then one day where she's doing some direct coaching and things like that. This year, our main focus has been on writing, writers workshop, writers notebooks, but we also are still continuing to do a lot of that support with the readers notebooks and our readers, especially as we're doing our F&P assessments and continuing to improve our small group instruction and conferring. Her monthly visits, as I had just stated a little bit, have shifted from that general support to doing some more of that direct coaching and direct supporting and making sure that she's really catching up, especially our newer staff. In regards to the ideas for support or improvement, that is one thing that's been really, really great. We had 2 new classroom teachers this year added to our staff, and the amount of work that last year we did in really helping support the idea of workshop and the reader's notebook and conferring with students. She was able to take a couple full half days to sit with these new classroom teachers and really take some individualized time with them to catch them up, to co-teach, to model in their classrooms, just as she did with teachers last year. Next slide, please. Thank you. Getting stuck here. Our workshop model is exactly as Stephanie had explained. Also, we have a building full of readers and writers, which is really exciting. And they're at the point now where they're doing that deep level of thinking while they're reading and writing. It's not just read a book, answer some questions. It's read a little, reflect, respond, react to what you're reading, talk about it with a friend, share during the workshop time with a friend of what you're reading and what you're experiencing. Being involved in book clubs and small group reading instruction, conferring one-on-one with a teacher or a peer about what you're reading and why and how it's going. We have a lot of our classrooms at MG do what we call First Chapter Fridays. I know some of our district admin have come over too to share that. And we share just a first chapter of a book, or in some of our 3rd grade rooms, we share like the first couple pages of a really great new story. And it just helps get their interest and get their ideas. And our goal is to help them explore new genres and new series and all of that as well. The workshop, just to clarify, workshop actually entails all of that. It's not just the time where they're doing their independent work and they're reading and they're reflecting and responding. It's everything. It's the whole group lesson, the small group instruction, the conferring, the book clubs, the independent time, reflecting in their writers notebooks and everything, just so you know. And then in regards to our ideas for support and improvement, we just are going to continue on the track we're on and monitoring and adjusting as needed and making sure that we're building as many opportunities for the continued growth and for in both language and literacy and all of the above, and just making sure that we're supporting the students. Thank you. Okay, for our F&P and EDL, I put both of those up there because our dual language classrooms at certain reading levels use the EDL as their reading assessment. And then also some of them use the F&P, which is the Fountas and Pinnell. Our monolingual English only classrooms all use the F&P. Teachers are learning more information about their readers than ever before. And as Stephanie had mentioned, we now have multiple data points about our students and where they're at and what skills they excel in, what skills they need support in. Looking at their growth over time, looking at trends in their protocols, which are the sheets that they're taking all of their data on while the students are reading. They're finding out so much about their students as readers, which is great. In addition, at our school, because we are Leader in Me school specifically, our students all write WIGs, which is wildly important goals. And so they write them, they reflect on them, they look at them. In fact, this past week during our Wolfpack time, all of our students met with a teacher one-on-one to look at their WIG and how it's going. If they've met it, they're setting a new goal. It's just a really great opportunity for them to be a true active participant in their learning and their growth. For ideas for support or improvement, our ideas really are to continue brainstorming and collaborating on ways to better facilitate the assessment window. It takes a long time, and especially at our school, when students are reading at a higher level, you're reading longer books. They're needing to respond for a longer time so that you get the most information. And we've been working really diligently with Laura Ehas and Jill Unger to figure out the best way to make sure we carry out this assessment. So we get the information we need, but we're also trying to minimize as much instructional disruption as possible. So it's kind of this double-edged sword. You're doing it because it's going to help you be the best instructor you can be and help them, but it takes a long time. So you're also pausing some types of instruction as well. Our ESSER program, so we were granted funds from the ESSER grant, right? And each school was able to have a certain amount of money and an opportunity to support students beyond the school day. At Mechanics Grove, we're helping students with both reading and math. And we were able to service over 76 students, and we selected students that either were in the approaching category on the Illinois Assessment for Readiness from the last year, or show that they would meet or they would land in the approaching category. So that's for our third graders now. They didn't take this in second grade. So we used multiple points of data to kind of determine where they would potentially fall on the IAR. Our goal is to get those students into the meets category, and that's what the funding is for. So we are doing this after school once a week, and we're doing it from January 17th through March 24th, which will be the end of our IAR window. And we have coordinated ours to match up directly with our after school clubs. So it runs at the same time on either a Tuesday or a Thursday. And we're running it on both days. And we've made sure that we've worked around kids who had already signed up for clubs. So we didn't have to pull them from an opportunity that they would have also had for an after school club. So we were able to mesh that together. So some students let's say they stay on Tuesday for ESSER, and then Thursday is their choir club. Or Tuesday they do their sports club, and Thursday they do the ESSER. So it's been really great because we've been able to meet their needs that way. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Pilot.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. My name is Mark Pilot. I'm the principal here at Carl Sandburg Middle School. Good evening, everyone. Before we start, you will not see OG in the slide presentation at Sandburg because, as Tanya said, it rolls up and then it kind of rolls out because that foundational work has been accomplished at our elementaries. We do have it in place for some of our tier 2 or our reading lab kids that need that extra push in phonemic awareness, or some of our special ed kids that just have that IEP need listed. So where we start is we start with the workshop model, and we are living the code at Sandburg, as everyone else has referenced, well, in their own unique way. But we are creating a community of readers and writers through the workshop model. The kids are demonstrating ownership, as Mrs. Drake and Mrs. Fergus mentioned. Our focus as well is on the writers that we have. So last year was reading, this year is writing. So we're doing a lot of work with the writing notebook where that ownership comes in. It's also been a journey for our staff because we fundamentally really changed last year, but the year before through COVID. The staff worked hard through the remote learning to start to think about how to implement the workshop model. If you think about the workshop model in the elementaries, as you've heard about it, it's that class, it's very fluid. The teachers are with the kids all day. Here at Sandburg, the teachers are with the kids for 84 minutes. and they have to get that mini lesson or that whole group instruction, the small group work, the conferring, the independent time, all done in some way in that 84 minutes. So they don't have as much time. And I think the part that I'm really proud of in the celebration for this year is just the depth that we've been able to go with small group instruction. And that is through the work of the F&P, the Fontes and Pinella, or Pinella, that's the Dodgers coach, Pinnell. But the Fontes and Pinnell reading assessment, because our staff, most of them were high school trained. And when you're a high school trained English teacher, you're trained in literacy. You're trained in, what does Oliver Twist mean, and what's the theme versus being trained in reading. And so what Fontes and Pinnell did for our staff was it taught them how to really dive in and go deep and teach the skill of reading. As I said, OG rolls out in 5th grade pretty much, because pretty much K through 1, K through 3, I would say, is learning to read. They're learning how to do the pig sounds. Once you go past 3rd grade and you start hitting 3rd, 4th, and 5th, you're really talking about learning from your reading. So you're much more in depth into strategies for comprehension and things like that. So a mini lesson may be a whole class lesson where the teacher's talking about, hey, when you're reading, there are multiple ways that an author may repeat something. What do you think that means? Why do you think they're repeating something, a sentence, an image, a word? And it gets after, oh, we're going to talk about theme. So then when they break into a small group, for those students that need that extra boost in comprehension, they can take a Fontes and Pinnell material, and they can actually have it set up that they know. They don't have to find it. They don't have to search for it. They can go to a set of documents and find a story that they know will work on repetition or sequencing or chronology or, all the different strategies that we learn in reading. So one thing that'll happen now, which is different than last year, is you'll hear our staff talking about the difference between skill groups, which is a guided reading group where all of the kids are working on the same story with the same skill being taught, versus a strategy group, which is more like that repetition piece. Why did the author, they could bring any piece of literature and look for a repetitive sentence, a repetitive image, a repetitive idea. Why do you think the author keeps repeating that? Well, it's important, so we should note it. That's where they respond, as Mrs. Fergus was saying, just like they do in 5th grade. They note it. They learn from it, they discuss it, and all of a sudden they're talking about theme, possibly in a nonfiction. They're talking about that larger concept idea. So we're very excited about that. I think one of the areas that we found as we've rolled in dual language is we've actually separated out the LA staff. So Sandburg used to have a 3-period block of LA and social studies. We actually, with dual language coming in, split that to support the program. And now we have like social studies department and an LA's department. They still work closely together. However, they're 2 separate programs taught by possibly 2 different teachers. And what we've done, because we have dual language staff, monolanguage staff, and now social studies staff, is we've created some staff. They aren't working in teams. Before, it used to be, myself, Miss Fergus, and Mrs. Drake on the 6th grade LA social studies team. That was our team. We had thought partners at our grade level. With dual language coming in, what we found with the changes we've made to accommodate the program is we have singletons. We have one person teaching social studies, one person teaching mono ELA, and one person teaching dual language ELA. And while they're all similar, they're also all different. So they've kind of lost their thought partners. So what we've been working on this year, and this will be moving forward, is that more articulated 6-8 department structure. So the negotiated contract that we entered in with Mia, with our LA department leader, has been just a celebration in and of itself, because now we have an LA teacher in a leadership role. We have a social studies teacher in a leadership role to kind of pull that department together, rather than myself or Jill or one of the district people having to do that. There's people actually on the ground in the classroom that know what they want, that are articulating those ideas, and it has been a wonderful addition to our 6A middle school. So thank you for working with Mia. Mia, thank you for working with the board on that, because that's been a win. Thank you, Anna. Our school-wide consultant, as Tanya mentioned, we have Erica Denman working with us about once a month for 2 days. It's the same exact model that they have running at MG. They come for a day, they meet with they meet with the department in language arts, and then they coach, and the teachers actually can watch the modeling of a lesson or a conferring idea. Like before, I thought conferring was just like, hey, Eric, what are you reading? Oh, that's really cool. I haven't read that. Tell me about the book. That's not what conferring is. I had no idea that, like, there's research on this and there's 5 different things you go through. And so just that in the moment coaching, as Mrs. Fergus mentioned, has been key to our staff. And I think the cool thing about our staff and working with Erica is that collaborative mindset that they have. They're looking forward to having an expert come in, see what they're doing, and sharing the ideas and grow. And that I think is just a nice addition to our professional development. So we are still moving forward with that. If we could go to the next slide. Our FMP and our EDL testing is taking place at Sandburg, just like it is in the rest of the district. And I think the cool thing is when you talk about data points, the data points really do one thing, and they confirm, they help us triangulate that student and what they need, what we need to celebrate with them. So we may see something going on in class and be like, oh, that's different. That's really cool. Emily's doing this now in her thinking about reading. She's being real metacognitive on this topic. But then when you go to the data points, you also see that through the STAR and the FMP data. You see the levels rising, you see the growth taking place. So it's just another tool to build our staff confidence, to tell us about the kids. I do agree, it takes a tremendous amount of time, and it is an in-depth set of materials. So we just need to continue to work on those, to work on using it and getting better at it. So our tutoring through the ESSER funding is going on. We actually started in December and ran it 3 weeks before winter break, and it's going through April like 16th, 21st, something like that. Because we test after spring break, the IAR. We did look at the data and selected kids who are approaching on the IAR level. So that would be somewhere in the middle of a 2 or a 3. Our goal is to get them to a MEETS, which is a 4 on IAR. We have about 15 staff working with 81 kids, although I just looked at that this morning. I think we have 92, a couple of other kids have chosen to come. We are doing it in reading and math, and we are based on the kids' schedule, and it's really not our clubs and our athletics that we're struggling with. Like, we can manage, just like Mrs. Fergus said, we can kind of take care of ourselves. It's all the outside stuff. They have taekwondo, they're going to horseback riding, they're doing ice skating, they have, religious class on that, whatever it is. And so one of the things that we would like to work on improve is just getting that attendance better. So our kids either meet with our staff 1, 2, or 3 times, depending on their availability. We're working with kids in reading and math. It's for 60 minutes. We kind of chunked it out into 3 20-minute blocks, kind of like, 10 minutes for beginning and getting everybody settled, getting a snack at the end of the day. And then closing it out, making sure they have a ride home and all of that. That's about 10 minutes. And then 20 minutes for reading skill or a math skill, and then 20 minutes for some content work in their grade level, just classroom work. One of the things we know, especially in math on IAR, is a lot of our kids, like if you look at our STAR testing, a lot of our kids will have data that shows that, oh, they're not gonna do well on this standard in math. And part of the reason is we haven't gotten to it yet. So even though STAR may be testing them on that, and when we break it down and align it to the IAR, it's not happening until like February or March because they haven't gotten to that unit. So part of what we added in was just some reteaching of the content area. So our tutors talked with the content area math staff or the LA staff. And the other piece that our dual language staff just added is very, very reflective of what Ms. Fergus was talking about, was our English speakers. And this is happening more with our English speakers, native English speakers to Spanish versus Spanish to English. We haven't figured out why yet, but they are just that vocabulary development from the Spanish language is something that they still need. So one of the things that our dual language teachers, when we have a child being tutored in dual language, they're also working on some Spanish vocabulary just to boost that academic Spanish component. Yeah, attendance is something we're still working on. That's been a little bit tricky. And then one of the things we're doing is our staff has worked hard to build relationships with kids through this program. So if the staff is willing to do it and the kids can get here, we're thinking of running it through the summer and just opening up Sandburg, and the kids can come with the staff and get a little extra help with their, we have a summer reading program, whatever it may be. So that's the ESSER program, and I'm going to turn it over to Laura Ehas and Cindy Cementa for the data review. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm Laura Ehas. I am the Student Services Coordinator for grades 3 through 8, so at Mechanics Grove and Carl Sandburg.
And Cindy Cementa, Student Services Coordinator at Lincoln, our Pre-K Center in Washington, kindergarten through second.
So as my friend Cindy here would say, we've done the work. We ate well, we worked out. Now we have to look at our blood work. So the good news is this is the best blood work we've had. So looking at this, we have 2 overall district goals. The first one is relating more to targeting those students who fell within that approaching category or a score of 3 on the IAR. We don't have an update for you on this, but all of the things the principals talked about, we have those interventions in place through our ESSER programs to be able to try to lift this group of students. After they've taken that spring STAR, we'll be able to update whether or not enough of them have made the growth that we need them to hopefully increase those scores and bring them to that needs category. Our second district goal is aligning to our district para framework, but looking at our students' growth percentiles from fall all the way to spring. So today we're going to give you an update on how they did from fall to winter. And our update is that they are at a proficient level in 11 out of our 12 goal areas, which is fantastic. Next slide. So looking at English reading from fall to winter, all 3 of our schools fall within that proficient category. 54% of our students were above that 50 student growth percentile at Sandburg, 59% at MG, and 42% at Washington. Next slide. Spanish reading from fall to winter, we see that both Sandburg and MG fall within that proficient range. Washington did fall within the needs improvement range. I'll let Cindy talk a little bit more in depth about the deeper dive we did.
So I hope you heard throughout the principals' presentations that connection between data and instruction, very apparent as they talked about what their data was showing and how they're responding. So we're doing that throughout. So when we saw Washington in that needs improvement range, we did a deeper dive. First, we looked at grade level, which I have here for you. And then when we saw that grade 2 and grade 1 were in particularly struggling, then we went in with the teachers and we looked at each teacher's classroom and each individual student to really dig deeper into how can we respond to change this trajectory by the time that spring rolls around. And so we've done that. We've identified, as Stephanie shared, that at second grade, we've seen a vocabulary that a large percentage of the kids that are not meeting their growth percentage were our kids where English is their first language and they're not performing well on Spanish reading, not because they haven't broken the code. If you listen to them read, they can read beautifully in Spanish, they don't know what they read. It's that comprehension piece because they don't have enough vocabulary in Spanish to really lift and carry them into those higher levels. So we're targeting those students with our ESSER funds. In first grade, it was kind of a mix. We have some vocabulary needs and we have some kids that are still struggling to break the code. Breaking the code happens in first grade. And so we have a little bit of a mixed bag there. So we're kind of targeting kids in both directions with our ESSER funds there. On top of that, our classroom teachers are aware. They started to dig into some of their units and some of their Phonetica materials and say, how can we improve these so we can help change the trajectory, not just for these students, but our future students down the road as well.
So this presentation was mainly focused on literacy, but our district goal does also look at math. And in terms of all three schools, we are on track within that proficient range. And so we are seeing that our students are making growth with all the wonderful things that our principals have shared about each of the schools and the hard work that our staff is doing. We're seeing, we're reaping some benefits, which is really exciting. And so hopefully when we come back here in the spring, we'll have even more wonderful things to share with you. Do you have any questions?
I have a question. And because all of the years blend together, can you refresh my memory? Which year are we at with the 90-10 dual language kids at Washington versus the 50-50?
So second grade is still 50-50 and first and K are 90-10. So this is first grade's first year at the 90-10.
Right. So could that be part of the, not that that's a bad thing to say that the 90-10 is not working, but that could help explain
So
why there may be a little,
When you
because they're
look at
catching up.
our kinder teachers and our kinder scorers,
Right,
they're in their second year of 90-10.
the teachers are.
The teachers. are.
Students would be in the first year.
The teachers are, but the teachers have changed significantly. Their structures and their instruction and are working, and it's showing.
Right, well, and that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to
Yep.
just find out.
And my prediction is we will see the same thing happen with first grade next year.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, because some people could look at those data points and say, oh, look, it's not working, but it, just like with any, when you're learning any language, you expect a delay and then there's a big catch. So just curious, like I said, I was just trying to remember where are we at?
Really good point to bring out. I mean, not everything when you change it right away is gonna show a drastic improvement. I think one of the things that I'd like to do, I mean, I know a lot of times we get things for you as a board, celebrate some things, but also get a lot of things that don't work. This mid-year update, this is one of the times that I can remember in quite a while. A lot of positive things are happening. And I think for us as a district to be able to see the connectivity that we're having, all of our principals are, is what's happening and how our students are progressing as they're going up. And then see so much green going through a mid-year. And I think we're not that far removed from something that happened a couple of years ago where we weren't in school, and to seeing that progress, that's a celebration. And I think, Eric, you brought up about how do we celebrate our students? Tonight's one of those nights where how do we celebrate the work that has been going and acknowledging that? That's where I go. Cause I mean, those individuals, they've put a lot of hard work into it. Carol, Tanya, Mark, Stephanie, Laura, Cindy, all the team, the teaching and learning team. And I just think it's one of those things, I just don't want us to lose that, because it's been a journey and I'm really proud of them. And I hope you are as well, because they're doing a great job, and it doesn't happen without their leadership and without their staff. And I think we know that's key. And I think we've made a lot of strides in both those areas to make sure we're supporting both those groups the past few years. So.
And I also appreciate that you guys brought this to us, because I know we didn't always do a mid-year part of it. It was usually sort of beginning and end. So I do appreciate seeing kind of the progress, understanding we don't have all the data yet and more to come. But I also like hearing about, I didn't know we were doing the ESSER tutoring. I think that's a really awesome thing that I'm happy to hear, you know, that is something that we're doing, because it allows us, if we do get questions from people, well, how did you use, you know, funds and things like that, that's good for us to know, because I wasn't aware that we were doing it. And I think that is a really positive, proactive approach to be taken, rather than waiting until we can try to decide what can we do differently in summer school this year that we didn't do in previous years, because that's only one step in it, because that's addressing the slide, but not necessarily addressing being proactive and trying to do some of the tutoring before the testing takes place, rather than waiting to see what the testing showed, and then how do we react to it? So I like seeing that as well.
And you got a stage.
Yeah.
We have a plan for stage.
Plan. I do appreciate that. I haven't seen you guys in person. Thank you. It's right into this.
It does. So as we continue to look moving forward and in the unique role that I'm in, one of the things that we're doing, and we got my 75/120 hat on, is the 120 board is wanting to go around to work with the theater schools to inform about the referendum that they have put on the ballot for April 4th. So this is the presentation that we're doing. It's actually, I'm having a hard time talking through it because here's the superintendent for this board, but I'm still talking about that board. It's the first time I've really had that. So I'm gonna put my 120 hat on. We've gotten this down pretty good, about 20-25 minutes. We'll go through some of the key points, and then the whole point of it is to make sure that you're informed. And for us, as we went through this 120, we saw this as a necessary move, and the reason because is we evaluated this before, back in 2017. It was a priority to look at what we need for building needs. At the time, the board decided that it wasn't the appropriate time to move forward. The board came back then, revisited what's going on, and said, we need to do something moving forward. As we progressed through that, one of the things we started talking about, what are some of the benefits for our community and what we're looking for? Focus back to when 120 built that 3-story addition. And one of the big questions was, what's the return on investment? And the return on investment that we can point back to is 120 has been listed in the US World News, top high school in the country for 5 years straight. We're anticipating that will be a 6th year. I think we'll find out in April for sure. When you look at the number of students that are earning honors credit now, that is almost up to 55% for the freshman class, which is not a normal number. And that is through expanding opportunities for students to earn honors credit. And then the other part that we've seen over time, and this is held up over time, is at 120, when you talk about the top tier kids, because it's sometimes where people want to go, going college bound, certainly, or likelihood of that. The top 12% of our students at 120's ACT or SAT scores actually rank in the top 10% of the country. So 2% more of the higher end kids that we see are actually outperforming the rest of the country. So those are some of the things that we looked at is when we were saying, all right, what's working? How can we make this a better benefit? What you'll hear tonight are really 3 things the board saw as priorities. Looking at the cafeteria, auditorium, and flexible spacing. Because what you'll hear is about the size of the campus, what we're looking to do to make sure students have appropriate access. And it does come down to academics. And you're going to hear about how our students that are in extracurricular activities, which includes sports, clubs, which is nearing almost 75% of the student population right now as of mid-year. They're practicing early in the morning, practicing late at night, practicing weekends. One of the things they want to do, they being a board, is to narrow that time down so our students can actually, the high school can get home earlier. Because the advancements you're seeing here and the benefits from the students, from our students at 75, we want those to translate. We don't want our students getting more tired because they're doing more activities, but we want them to have that full experience. So to take you through that is going to be board member Lisa Yaffe, and then Kevin Quinn, and then I'll follow up at the end. So without further delay, Lisa.
Thank you. So hello, I'm with Kevin. This is like a different part of the multiverse where normally I'm there. Different people, but here we are. And we are here to talk about the community that we share. The presentation you're going to see tonight is one of several things that we have in order to help our community understand why we are coming to referendum, why our board voted unanimously to do so. It's this presentation. It is a tour. We invite you all to come and tour and get to know the high school, because in this case, from District 75, a huge portion of your students will end up going through those doors. And then the third piece is we have a lot of information online. So we'll show you at the end, there's a way that you can get more information. Our responsibility as a board is not to ask for yes votes, but it is to inform the population. So we are hitting the road talking about what we have seen and what our issues are. As Dr. Myers said, we had done some work about long-term facilities planning some time ago. We picked it up again, and this was the first time I was really learning what our issues are and how it impacts learning, how it impacts the life of a student as well as the staff. So we're going to talk a little bit about the why in more detail. We're going to talk about the project overview, stop briefly at the financials, and then see if you guys have any questions. So we aspire, as do you, we aspire to engage our students with great learning environments and be able to attract and retain exceptional staff. What we have learned is that when we think about what Mundelein as a high school can be and how it contributes to our community, is that our high school is a constraint. The physical facilities are a constraint, keeping us from being the high school we can be, and therefore the community that we can be. So what is the issue? We do not have enough of the right kind of staff. So our space, or did I just say staff? No, space, yes, correct. We do not have enough of the right kind of space. So our limitations are impacting our academics. We have limits, we have to use the space certain ways, but also activities, athletics for sure. And we are having an issue with scheduling. The scheduling is, as Dr. Myers said, some students are starting early in the day, going late into the evening. And this is a big deal. Our cafeteria space and the servery kitchen area to provide food is also a significant limitation, and it's causing operational challenges. We have some students who get to school in the morning, eat breakfast or eat lunch as early as 10:15, and then they have to go the whole rest of the day without eating. And the opposite is true. We have some students who don't even get to eat until 1:40. That's because the capacity of our cafeteria was 500, was it? 450. It's 450 at the max, and we have 2,500 students. So we don't have enough space to feed students in any kind of timely way. That's one area. And then the facilities we do have are a mismatch in terms of how they're equipped. They're in many cases, it's the original building as envisioned in the late 1950s, as built in 1960. And our first students were there in 1961. What we needed then for the 1,500 students is not helping us to meet all of the space needs for our current student group. The kitchen, as we said, is outdated. Not only is it limited in terms of the number of students that can eat and how quickly they can get through the lines, the kind of food that they're served. It's no longer a match to the way high schools operate currently. Our auditorium, students who are in a wheelchair can access the auditorium through the back, but they don't have an access ramp on stage, for example. But it's not just that. Our auditorium is small. We can't get our whole show choir to be able to do their whole performance. There are limitations in terms of being able to provide all of the staging, the sets that we would need to be able to do to function as a modern day high school. The athletic spaces are outdated, and we need to be able to have spaces that allow us to do athletics, but also use that for other purposes, including physical education, but other types of classes. When we built our school, we had 10 boys sports and 2 girls sports. We now have 15 boys sports and 17 girls sports. We are severely limited. We are borrowing and stealing, probably even from you all, for space, for athletics, for activities, for practices. We hear from parents who are like, we're practicing in this place one time and somewhere else the other time. We're borrowing from the Park District and other districts. We just don't have enough to do what we're trying to do in the space that we have. Next up, Anna. So please come see the limitations, but here's what we're aiming for and what we've learned. We've been doing the work to travel to districts. We are working with White and Company. They are our architect, and they have been showing us what are some of the things that can be done with these spaces. Expanded cafeteria space. This is a modern day servery where there's room to move. There are multiple places, so students aren't going one after the other and queuing in a line. Modern food offerings, spacious. There's data that shows that students order healthier food when it can be available to them in places like this. Next up, the performing arts spaces. I mentioned some of the challenges here. Who's been to Mundelein High Schools? Enough said, right? It's a time capsule from 1960, but we don't have enough space to seat up everybody, so we need to expand in that area. Also, the infrastructure, the acoustics, there's a lot of improvement needed there. Next up. Our design, you'll see in a moment, includes a big multi-purpose space. It can be called a field house, but we are thinking of it much more broadly than that. We want space that allows us to do some things, including physical education activities, but also be able to use this for the marching band to practice, for large-scale professional development opportunities. For there are many things that we could do if we were able to have a space this large. Other things we're looking at, career training and transition spaces. This is exciting that we have really been working on, not yet on. We have really been working on thinking about those pathways to college, but also to some of the vocations and finding ways that we can help to supply the kind of talent that our businesses are looking for in the area, providing students with those pathways that can give them skills and practice that are sometimes the more traditional, like wood shop and mechanics and that sort of thing, but now even more technology enabled. Exciting stuff. Transition spaces refers to our 18 to 22-year-olds who are special education students who are in transition. We have space that allows them to get skills they need to be productive and independent as possible. As we're looking at all of this, we are finding opportunities to increase our mental health support. That includes thinking about where to put our services, how to make them visible, how to provide spaces that students can be with others and socialize more or be alone if they want to be. We're going to be thinking about everything in terms of the lighting and the sound, acoustics, access to visibility for greenery. Biophilia is the word. So we're really putting an emphasis on feelings of safety, feelings of mental health. Multi-purpose space throughout. This one obviously is multi-space. We have other spaces we're thinking about how do we get the most out of every bit of space we have. And then last but not least, our building is older in places and it is no longer efficient. And we want to, as we're investing as a community, we want to make sure that future tax dollars are not being spent on inefficient spaces. So this picture here, this is a stairwell, and these are becoming fairly common in schools. But really what it's meant to capture is that students respond to light. They respond to natural light. They respond to being able to collect together or to be on their own. If you drive into Mundelein High School's parking lot in the morning, I drop my daughter off at 8:20, 8:25. The cars are still going. You could tell in the winter the cars are on. It's because they don't have places to come and hang out together. But this is the type of thing that would help them to do that. We do have a difference in elevation between the north and south parts of our school. So this is something that is actually in our design. Not necessarily these finishes, but the same idea. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Quinn.
Hi, thank you. This is the architect's rendering of what the proposed project looks like. This is a culmination of an extensive process of facility assessments and forecasting and programming with our staff to look at the needs of the staff, as Lisa mentioned. So when we first started this process, we had an engineering firm, Alara Engineering, come in and study the infrastructure. So study our mechanicals, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection systems, and see where our weaknesses were, where our inefficiencies were, what we could bring forward to realize savings in energy efficiency. But more importantly, over the past few years, we've all learned a lot about indoor air quality. So that was one of the focuses. The architects came in, they looked at our existing structure. Commercial buildings, school buildings have a lifespan of 50 to 75 years. So you can see we're at the dizzy end of that with 1960 construction. We've come to a point where we need to address those things because we're going to start to have a problem, and we're going to be spending good money after bad on repairs. So what this rendering looks like is the layout, the potential layout for our campus. One of the first things that Lisa, I should mention, Lisa noted about the dropping of her daughter off, and that traffic's a problem in Mundelein High School's campus. So we all know that. So one of the first things we looked at is establishing a ring road that would take us around the campus and actually join the campus. Currently, there's not a loop that connects that. We've talked with the village and the county. Almost every parent that's ever dropped a kid off at that school has made a comment about the need for this. Relieves some stress with bus traffic the beginning and end of the day. So that was the ring road. We're expanding some parking spaces in here. You'll notice that there's a couple things missing out of here is our maintenance garage, our tennis courts, and our softball field. We'll address those. We've accommodated for those in this plan, so we'll address those as we go. This is the field house that Lisa talked about. We see basketball courts, but we have to view this as a multi-purpose space, as all other spaces on here. So this is at the north field, the northern end of our property. There's a swale that runs along back in the side of your protected wetlands. So we have to be careful about how we develop on this. But again, this affords us the opportunity, PE, our athletic programs for practices. Park District utilizes our facilities a tremendous amount. We're looking to explore more of that with the incorporation of this field house. We look at our competition gym. So currently our main gym sits right in here. Our competition gym, we lack the capacity. In order to bring our main gym up to current standards, we would lose 15% of our seating by allowing or by changing our seats out to accessible seating. We lose 15% of the capacity, which we're less than the student capacity seating in there right now. So we're woefully short there, and it's not air conditioned. So it's cost prohibitive for just those two items to make that move here. So our competition gym would be here. Locker rooms would be over here. This is currently our north gym. So what this project equals is 206,000 square foot of new construction and 84,000 square foot of renovation. So the renovated spaces, as the engineers and the architects went through, they evaluated the structural steel and the masonry and the components of not all the building was built. There was a 1994 edition. There was another one in 97. There was one in early 2000. So it's not all that vintage. So we looked at what we could utilize that. This north gym was one of those. So we looked to add a second layer on here for wellness. First floor would be what you would normally see in a weight room with racks of machines and weights. Second floor would be more aerobic equipment. We would look to open this up after school for students to participate. Not every student can go get a wellness or a gym membership at Lifetime Fitness. And the collaboration and the camaraderie that exists with students that are participating together in a free exercise program after school, we know that's going to have a behavioral impact on the school also. So that would be the repurposed North Gym. The center here that's our auditorium. So as Lisa mentioned, there's a 9'3" grade difference between door 5 where our bus drops off and the tennis courts. So to take advantage of that auditorium, we need a slope space to accommodate the auditorium. For construction costs, to minimize those, we looked at where that would fit in perfectly and kind of be a center point of the campus. That's where this will be right here. We have two commons. The current cafeteria sits in here. We're going to redo the kitchen, the underground infrastructure, the electrical, the plumbing is shot. We've made repairs, extensive repairs. We just can't do that any longer. So to bring codes up, the electric services up to where they need to be, and plumbing services need to be there. We'll redo all the underground for the kitchen area. We're going to reuse as many components from the existing kitchen equipment wise as we possibly can, but the infrastructure is shot. We'll open this up, as Lisa mentioned. Currently, we serve 450 students per lunch period with a maximum capacity of 500. We're looking to cut that down, reduce that number so the students can collaborate out here, enjoy their lunch. And this will be free open spaces. This is what's being referred to as the South Commons. This is the North Commons. So as you can see, there's kind of a delineation between activities and athletic spaces and the academic side of the building. And that's by design so that we can have events in there blocking off the academic side and letting the clubs and activities and athletics occur without having to disrupt what's going on this side. So these two commons areas would be open, again, collaborative spaces. When you're here for a function, kind of a natural spot, what we know as our commons now is so congested, this would open that up, more natural light coming in. We see over here some expanded band spaces and music spaces. Our band program, our band room was designed for 80 students. We have 250 students currently in a very successful band program and music program in general. So these would be expanded spaces over there. The hash mark line is not included in this proposed project. That's for the potential for future expansion for classroom space. So the architect identified where could we add, again, trying to keep that line over the academic side over here. The campus currently sits on 44.5 acres. If we built a campus for our student population with the clubs and activities we have, we would need 80 acres of land, cost of $380 million. So we can't have any more land. We're landlocked in there. So we can grow vertically. We have a little bit of horizontal space. They identified this as being that area for future expansion. Again, not in this plan, but earmarked for the potential future expansion. When we look up here, this was the former Kirk of the Lakes Church. Currently, we use it as a district office. We have some of the human resources functions in there. We're looking to add our transition center, which would be relocated from over here. That'll move over to that. We had a programming meeting today with Jamie DiCarlo to discuss what the transition center would look like there, how we can grow the program, how we can provide with what the resources. Currently, we're in the building. We're kind of landlocked in the building with that program now. So we're looking at how to make that flourish, how to make it a more robust program. Also in that space would be the CTE, Career and Technical Education. As Lisa mentioned, that was one of the things that it's been a burgeoning endeavor for all school districts. So those kids that aren't going to go to college necessarily, or their career path doesn't take them through a college. Some of the, manufacturing, we have a tremendous amount of manufacturing that occurs in Lake County. We also have some locally where our students participate in internships. So we're looking to expand that program. That would be over here. So as we look forward to what this means to us, where do these other elements go? So the softball field and the tennis courts. Next slide, please, Anna. The Village Green. So the district purchased this property in 2005 with the anticipation of student population growing to support a second campus. That never came to fruition. So currently there's a company that's been hired, Golf Visions, to run this as a golf course. This isn't a revenue source for the school district. Times before the pandemic, golf just wasn't a thing. So it was a struggle. So basically trading dollars. So the school boards decided at this time to put this asset to work for the school, for the community. And it's besides the displaced campus elements, the softball field that we looked at, we're going to move the softball field. And can you go back one side? I'm sorry about that. So the goal is to have all of our athletic competitions, varsity competitions held on our campus. So right now we have our varsity baseball field, lower level field. Our softball field will be located here. Varsity baseball will be located here. The other elements, the tennis courts will go. Next slide, please, Ann. I'm sorry. So what we look to do here is this sits on 90 acres of land. So we're going to move those fields. We're going to two baseball fields, two softball fields. We have tennis courts here. We're currently short on tennis, the number of tennis courts to host IHSA beyond conference tournaments. So we needed to expand that. That's here. One of the other components, if anybody plays pickleball, I don't know if anybody, apparently that's pretty popular. So we've been exploring with the community, with the park district, what that looks like, partnerships for these, when these surfaces aren't being used. How could the park district utilize this? How could other community members, feeder programs, how can they utilize these fields? So we looked at the expansion of here between tennis and pickleball courts. These fields are just combination fields, not just, but they're combination fields between football, lacrosse, soccer. That'll provide us with enough practice space and competition space to accommodate that. We have a small building over here, a restroom facility and some storage. We're looking at what we can do with the existing building here. We've yet to really dig deep and do an assessment inside of that building. But how we can incorporate that either as a arm of the transition center or house district offices, we're still exploring those opportunities. We talked about developing some walking paths in here. We've met with many community groups, and one of the takeaways from that is we would love that kind of a space, an open space where we can go for a walk. We can utilize that. We also have the school's cross-country teams. We're looking at how to expand upon that. So this is again, this is a district asset. How it's being repurposed for this directly benefits the students of the district, the students from District 75, the community members. It's a what's known as a win-win. So sequencing, I'm sorry, next slide. So when we look at this, and we've been meeting a considerable amount about talking about how this construction will play out. It's looking at a 4-year construction duration. And so the natural spot would be from the north and work south. So we'll put the field house up, some of the programming that's going to be displaced temporarily because of the build. We'll shift those programs into here. So this is for a period of time. This is just going to be one large open the truest sense of a multi-purpose space. That's what the field house will become. And then as we go forward here, we're going to start to fill in. We're looking at condensing the schedule, which we've been working with the architects and the engineers again extensively with to try to shorten that duration up. We realize the impact on here. No programs will be canceled because of this. No plays, none of that. We're gonna coordinate where those go. We're gonna be creative. No athletic competitions, no clubs and activities. Nothing will be shuttered. So we're gonna have to be a little more creative on how we function. If we can condense that construction schedule as much as possible, it's gonna free those opportunities up for our students to get back to some sense of a complete campus. So as we progress, you can see the legend over here. We would move from the field house. What we're looking to do is possibly do these components. There's minimal impact to the day-to-day operations of the school with this construction. Once the envelope goes up, then we can work minimal noise transmission into the academic side. So we're looking at that currently. This area is the commons area, that staircase that Lisa showed you. That's going up to the second floor. So our current media center sits on the A wing. We're going to add this second floor to a media center to meet the needs of the current media center. And then also to develop a space for our art program, which is currently down in the lower level. The artists, they're starving artists and they like to complain about where they're at. But so we're going to give them a spot for, not only their program, but also for art demonstrations and kind of an open, collective collaborative space for them. So that would be on the second floor up here. So again, it's a 4-year. We're trying to condense that down as much as we can. We're looking for opportunities for savings everywhere we can get them. So what we need to do, we all know about the construction materials and labor, and the commodities market is very tight right now. So we're looking to identify equipment items, electrical switch gear, other components in here. The district will purchase those ahead of time. We need a lot of lead time on those. That saves the district money in the 10 to 15% on those items that would normally be charged by a contractor. So we're looking to take advantage of everything we can possibly do to keep the process streamlined and keep construction rolling along in spite of all the other obstacles that are out in front of us. There's a lot of planning involved in it. So currently we're in the design development phase. Part of the design development phase is programming. So we're working with all the different groups, all the different stakeholders within inside of the school. As we start to layer that in and the construction documents start to be drawn up, we're going to phase the construction documents. So we're going to group them per element that we're going to build off of, and then release those, and then start to get bids on those so we can keep it moving quickly. We're not going to plan all the way out those 4 years. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Myers. You can wrap it up.
So the last part that I have is to go over the finances, and one of the things everybody asks is about where are 120 being good stewards of the money. So when you take a step back, the first thing that I'd look at is the last time the district asked for anything like this, meaning a referendum to actually add on to a building. Where they actually asked for a tax increase from the community was 1995, and that's when they did the main entrance. And just in comparison, to do the main entrance back at that time was $20 million, so a lot different. So that time period. Now, they did build the three-story addition back in roughly 2015-16. They did get partial funds through a state grant, which is no longer eligible for this new build because they already have had access to that. I think the good Stewart piece with that three-story addition is they put in an aggressive payment back period. So they've already paid that off, or just about will have that paid off before any potential referendum, should people vote for it, be passed. So it'd be paid off. The other part we look at, that we came through as a group was, where is District 120 when you compare it to other high schools only tax rates? So what you have here are all the high school only districts, because unit districts, their tax rate's different. So they have a kindergarten and they have a high school, but the tax rate's different than what the high school only can apply. So that's why we did it this way. When you look at it, Mundelein High School has historically been in the bottom third, meaning it's the lower rate that people are applying to the tax assessment value. So when you think about what's been happening with what's been able to be done with what has been built, type of staffing we've been able to do, when you think about the competitiveness we've had academically and athletically, we keep saying from a high school standpoint, a pretty good bargain for everything that's out there for what you think the tax rate is. If we were to be comparable to what Stevenson did, just for example, Stevenson's at 309. If the high school district 120 charged at 309, probably wouldn't need to ask for a referendum because of how much more money would be coming in year after year. The difference roughly is we're 120 is roughly like 17,000 per student capita right now. We're almost at 30. So it keeps increasing. So to look at this, it gives you an idea. Good Stewart's been maintaining it low. And I know you as a board, we've also tried to do the same thing here at 75. What does it mean if the referendum were to pass? It would jump up into the top third. What we do know is it would not exceed this number right here with how it's put. So the highest that 120 would go would be number 3 with the tax rate for that time period. Anna, next one. So what does it mean? The ask of the community is to pass it, to go for a referendum for a vote that the community can vote on for $175 million. What does that mean? The average home price is approximately about the 300,000. The key part of that, it's not the average home price, it's the fair market value. And I'll show you this in a minute. So this number does not mean what you think it will sell for. It's the fair market value that the tax assessor puts on your tax bill. That's the number you gotta look at. When talking with the assessor, a couple of the returns on investment. What's the benefit for us for doing this? A, just from talking with him, the boundaries for 120, the assessed values are increasing at a higher rate than the communities to the east, at approximately 2% more a year. So the home values are going up faster. The second thing is, in talking with realtors, because of that, realtors are saying that market that we're all living in right now, and especially in this area, it's sellable. People are wanting to go here because they see the better value, meaning the home pricing of homes, plus with they're seeing the connection with the academics piece. So that's the return on investment. So what does it mean for us? We're looking here. So when you look at the fair market value, we'll stick with the 300,000 as that price point. The board wanted to acknowledge of trying to give families an opportunity to kind of plan and acknowledge what you heard Kevin say. It's going to be a multi-year process. So trying to take out loans on the money as the work goes along, as opposed to having it all up front. So starting in August of 2024, we'll use school years. That first change would be a total of, if the fair market value in a home was 320, it would be that for the year. So August of 2024, a tax bill would increase approximately $320 for a fair market value of a home at 300. That equates to roughly $26 a month. That following year, so going into phase 2, essentially, let's just say that the total tax increase, so the 320 would increase a total 550. Right, so $230 more added on, which equates to $45 a month. That would be added on, and then the final stage would be going into that last year, the 2026. Total amount would go to $690 for $57 a month. those are the highest levels that are anticipated that it would reach for a couple of reasons. When they did the projections, they put the CPI rates per year at below average number, put it at 1.5. It's historically been at least 2. And they also took into account and made inflation rates and everything else a little bit more conservative. So it inflates the number a little bit so that it doesn't get to a point where a community member would get their tax bill and go, whoa, wait a minute, you said 550 and it was higher. Plus, what this does is it takes into account over time, if you have people moving in, adjustments that way, it also disperses the amount of money that goes to your taxes. Because then it's shared out through more people because more homes coming on. We know more homes are coming on because the Village of Mundelein alone, we're seeing approximately 1,300 new homes coming on from different subdivisions that have been developed. So we're going to see some of that dispersed. So ideally, this would be the max amount and that would carry out for approximately the next 20 years on the loan. But we'd anticipate that coming down over time. Next slide on it. So here's an example of one of the things that we want to keep stressing with our community is looking at the fair market value. So when you go to the tax bill, here's what they really want to look at. The 301, that's the number they're basing it off of. When we took 2 examples from Del Webb, Grand Dominion, what the house actually sold for compared to the fair market value for 2 that were for sale currently was about $100,000 more than this number. So keep that in mind. So if community members do approach you, just that's kind of a context for them saying, don't look at what's on Zillow or anywhere else. Look at your tax bill, go to the fair market value. That's the number you got to kind of find yourself. I think the other thing for you, for us that live in, I'd say the Mundelein proper, our average price for our home is a little bit less probably than the 300,000. So being able to talk with people, maybe using that $200,000 moniker to say that's a good price to start with too. So what we're asking then, next slide, is if people do have questions, we've got a QR code. We ask them to go to the District 120 website. There's an email link there. If they've got questions, we're keeping up with the questions that are asked and updating that frequently. And outside of that, any questions?
If it were to pass, because this is the one in April, right?
April 4th, yeah.
Right. So if it were to pass, when do you anticipate construction starting? Because I know for us, with our project, which is much smaller by comparison, it's still, there's quite a lead time.
Yep.
So.
Very similar, Kevin.
It is similar, and so we've been progressing with the architect and the engineer from the design perspective. So that's going pretty good. We have significant amount of site development work, so we have utilities to relocate. We'd look to start that process here coming up this summer, and then continue through. So we would look, most likely you would see groundbreaking that following spring. But we do have a significant amount of site development work to do. We've already completed our civil survey of the property. We had that done in October. So we're trying to keep that ahead of it as fast as possible.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. All right, Jim.
Always get stuck with the less exciting stuff. So, for your review and consideration, I have one new job description. This would be for the administrative assistant to support the efforts of facilities, maintenance, and construction. So this role would largely be responsible for maintaining vendor relationships and solicit quotes for both districts, as well as track service contracts and maintenance renewals. Not like we're gonna have any construction or anything possibly going on with the stage or anything you just heard, so. If you have any questions?
The only question is, how does that, I mean, let's say both, let's say the referendum passes, wouldn't there be substantially more construction going on at 120? How does that with like our, because I imagine this is a shared services.
It would be,
arrangement,
right, and this position would be housed with 75. So I think that there would be ebbs and flows. But again, with any type of role like this, we want to be sensitive to make sure that one district is not disproportionately affecting the workload of a shared title.
right? And our construction would probably start first. Ours would be smaller, but But just so that it might work out that way, but then that would be part of the cost matrix and stuff that we've got in place, right?
So what we're looking at is the initial cost probably all in total 65,000 for the position. It would be split 30,000 would be for 75, 35 for 120. And part of the thinking, because we're looking at having our two buildings grounds persons take over the construction management piece. But there's some cost savings with that, well, there will be. But knowing that of how their roles have expanded, their roles probably are in a position where they needed to start having some type of support. It's been a great benefit with adding in-house for electrical and HVAC work, that the amount of work we're seeing being distributed amongst the group and the amount of invoices, the paperwork stuff, it's just gotten to it's getting to the point for both of them that it's hard to balance. So even if the construction wasn't there, our districts are large enough and I'd like to think we're becoming more self-sustaining, that it's warranted to be able to support them in their roles.
One of the things I would just add is that in our meeting on Friday, Kevin talked, because I was like, I can't believe that school districts don't have a position like this, like just from my high school experience. And Kevin was talking a little bit about how now, like Kevin and Dave are dealing with like paperwork, and it's sort of seems like that's a waste of their time and their talents to be working on that, so. That just my 2 cents. Okay, next up on the agenda is committee updates. First is board policy.
Okay, so. It occurred to me that our packet did not have our second, or at least the packet I saw, didn't have our section on the policy that we've sort of gotten off track of doing. Because I know we anticipated, we broke up all of our policies into sections and we're gonna do that. But I know the last couple of months, we got a little sidetracked between the prep and then the follow-up from the the IASB conference, and then the press policy, since it was so big, we did a first reading and a second reading and a passing, and then we didn't then spend another, half hour, 45 minutes going through a whole policy section. So kind of like Eric, when we're going through with the code of conduct piece, we've been going through the sections, and I think we're also at section 8, which would make sense as to why going through that, because I do have my notes that we did section 7, which would have been, so section 8 was scheduled to be when we did this last year and implemented this in October. And here we are in February, so that kind of tells you where. So I guess the first question is, how would everybody like us to proceed with it? Do we do sort of a high level overview to catch up? Or do we still take in depth? Do we break that up? I don't know what's most advantageous, because I think it has been helpful for us to go through each section a little bit to kind of learn about our district, especially for those of us that maybe have never read the policies before. However, we've also been doing some in-depth review of some of them with a lot of the work that's been done. So I can't say that we're completely ignorant of the policies as they exist, especially with some of the changes going on with some of the big press plus things. So, I've got it pulled up. I can kind of go through either way, but either way, I don't know if it makes sense to sort of assign some homework and have everyone go through and then maybe bring back any comments and questions. Maybe not catch up like all 4 sections go between now and then, because that would be a lot of policy reading, but maybe kind of trying to catch up a little so that by the time we see the new board in May, we're kind of caught up, we're very close, so that then we can start again with the annual review of it.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yep.
What chunk should we look at next?
Right, so that's what I'm saying. So do you want me to kind of break it down a little bit further and I could send out the section to everybody, and I could just one way push it out to everybody, to look at that between now and the next meeting, and I could try to look through and chunk it out a little bit to figure out maybe how we can get through it between now and April. And then maybe send those out, and I'll probably just send you links to our policy manual, which is already on the website. But I at least can send you to it. And I have a feeling that when Anna created our section, which I do have the Google Doc thing. It's got a bunch of bookmarks on the side, but I'll tell you, when I click on them, I don't get anywhere in anything. So I'm telling you, that's probably just me not knowing how to do Google, because that's my downfall here, but I could definitely at least rework that section a little bit, and then let on it, I won't mess up her bookmarks, because I'm sure they mean something and I don't just don't know how to do it. But I can copy it and do a different one, and then have her help me with that and do that. That'll work. So I mean, I can. So the section that we're on is starts with section, we called it section 8, but the section in our board policy is section 6, which deals with philosophy and goals. So there's educational philosophy and objectives, school accountability, calendar organization, and then curriculum. There's a lot of curriculum pieces to that. That may, because as I recall going through all of the press policy stuff in the past, a lot of that isn't necessarily our district. Most of that is dictated to us, and you know that, so we're not going to be going through and substantially changing a lot of these curriculum pieces at our board meetings, because we do have to make sure that they comply with state standards and such. You know, there's all the different curriculum pieces, what student social and emotional development, teaching about religions, about controversial issues, using animals in the educational program, et cetera. There's a whole section on special programs for at-risk students with graduation incentives. A lot of that maybe a little bit more dropping out of school, a little more high school focused, so probably doesn't impact us quite as much. Education of children with disabilities, gifted programs, accelerated placement programs. So that was probably a little more high school. Although we do have some pieces to it, because we did talk about how in the last press policy piece, how we accounted for some of the changes that happened, and we looked at what does our district do, and we send some of our 8th graders or 7th graders at the high school for math and things like that. A lot of these are statutory things too. So education of homeless children, migrant students, home and hospital instruction, which we did talk about and had a little bit of things when we went back from our COVID policies and the one, you know, our COVID policies so much as practices. And then when we dialed that back a little bit and changed our home instruction practices, English learners, Title I programs, extended instruction programs, remote programs, and then curricular and co-curricular activities. Next, get into a little bit more with just instructional resources. So, you know, most of the section 6 deals a lot more with the teaching part of school policies. And that may be fairly easy to kind of skim through and see if we have any questions and stuff, because I don't know a lot of changes are gonna be looked at on that, but I guess we'll see how that goes. A lot of the section 9, you know, if we're trying to sort of catch up with this, talk about high school credit, you know, again, for students in grade 7 and 8, high school credit for person, you know, there's some of the stuff would be applicable to us. Some isn't. Not that it's not applicable, but it's less likely for us to be changing. You know, achievement awards, student testing and assessment programs. Again, we have now been given a lot of data today, especially, you know, and then we know we do a mid-route and then year end review as well, where we have been working on our data practices so that we can be up on that. Then there's the equity sections, which we've had a lot of experience, you know, now in going through our educational equitable policies, and then our equity policy that we added. And then, you know, going through the others, it's mostly section 10, getting into our section 7 of the policy stuff is dealing with student assignment and transfers, which we obviously only have intra-district, we only have one school, set of schools for our grades. We've got non-public school students, including parochial and homeschooled students, and then the residency requirements, school admission and transfers in and out, attendance policies, release time for instruction, release time during school hours, health, eye, dental examinations. Again, a lot of that's going to be statutory, what we require and is required. And then we get into rights and responsibilities for students. And we get into behavioral issues. So I will try to look at this. Since it wasn't included in the materials this time, I will break it down a little bit further so that we can kind of try to get back on course and send those out and then. See if anyone else has any other comments with them.
Okay. Thank you. Next up is finance advisory. Go to that meeting, right?
Oh, yeah,
Finance.
team was going on.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so at the finance committee. We went through his budget. And it's in this package. And next month. There's gonna be a lot more, I think, discussion and presentation by Keith. So I would suggest if you have an opportunity before the meeting to look at what he put together. Because she took the entire budget and basically just about every single line and explained what the revenues were and explained where the expenditures were and where everything is and how it's been funded. I mean, she did a lot of work on this. But as we've talked in the past about what the budget should be and how we should be looking at it and where it's gonna take us, this is perfect. I mean, she really lays out, and anybody who's got any questions about what we're doing and what we approved and why we approved it, I mean, it's all very clear and it's answered. And it's very clear as well where our revenues are coming from, and it's very clear on where the expenditures are going. And it also shows how well we're doing financially, because I know that's a thing, that's what we keep talking about, you know, the community gives us two things. Our dollars and our kids. The dollar part of this is in good shape.
Where were you saying that you said for us to take a look at? Are you talking about her monthly pieces or are you referring to a different? I just want to make sure that I'm. What am I looking at? No,
I don't know if the budget's actually in this packet.
no, but that's what I
I
would.
looked at what I had, okay.
So we
Before
set it up for
then,
March.
yeah,
Okay,
before then you will get it.
okay. No, that's fine. I just
Alright.
wanted to make sure I understood, like, what am I supposed to be looking at? I'm happy to, but thank you.
Let me just add, as long as we're talking about finances, that I'm currently signing a big stack of papers because we sold some bonds. So, and T was very happy with the detail of it. I asked her when she told me about the stack of paper, so I'm sure next month, I'm sure she'll tell us about it, so. Well, you know,
And I get to sign all the blue pieces. He's done with red.
there's a lot more blue, right? Okay, next up is shared services. We haven't had a meeting for a while, and Kevin sent out the, and Friday, Kevin sent out the thing about the joint board meeting that we had, which was really interesting. It's had been a long time since we had done that. So it was nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces. And hear a lot about, where everyone's sort of heading at this point in time. And a good special ed presentation by Jamie. To talk about, you know, what's happening in our world with special ed. So it was really good. And then we have a new shared services position on the, for approval first night. So that's really about it. And then last is strategic planning, right?
Oh. So. Just real quick, we ended up with the last meeting approving the goals that went with the previous meeting of the values. So the next phase of that then was for us to put an action plan in place. So we met with Jamie and Sarah, and we put together the action plan. But we kind of ran out of time to try to get everything here to the board to be able to talk about it. So what we decided to do was have Jamie and Sarah take that action plan and meet with their administrative team and see if they can't break it down and, make it more, compatible to what we looked at in terms of goals and what the administrative staff is going to be looking at. And then they're gonna come back and meet with us with a pared down version of what the action plan is. And talk with us about the action plan, how it fits with the goals. With the most important piece of this being that we're all on the same page. That we have, what we see as our goals and our values. And that translates then into what the administrative staff sees through the action plan. Where there's this consistency, and then it's very clear to everyone here. To the staff and to the community that we're all on the same page and we're working to move into the same direction. So that will come next March meeting, right?
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Next up is representative updates. The first one is the STEAM Foundation.
We have our, we didn't meet last month. We have our next meeting tomorrow night. And we are busy planning for the pizza throwdown that I believe is April 9th. I can confirm that. And they're also preparing, I haven't heard the updates because we didn't have the meeting. In order to see what ended up happening with and how successful and what the enrollment and everything was with the Saturday Scholars or whatever they're calling it, Saturday Steamers program that's going on right now, that's currently now in process. So and they're also working to try to deal with the getting prepared for, STEAM camps this summer and dealing with the Explorers program that they're trying to do like they did last year. So I have more to report next time since we usually have our meeting earlier, but didn't happen this time. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. CEDAW?
Not too much to report on since our last meeting. Shortly after our last board meeting, CEDAW's exec board approved the agreement, the purchasing and sale agreement between District 75 and CEDAW for the Fairhaven School. And then next week.
District 76.
District 76, sorry. And next week is the governing board meeting where we'll vote to approve it. And then there's nothing.
Thank you. And the last one is community outreach, village liaison, right?
Yeah, on the February 13th, I went to the mayor's State of the Village address, where he kind of gave an overview of the state of the village and where it's at. I was gonna print out and bring everybody a copy of what they had. But it's 165 pages, so I only had the resources to do that, so I'll condense it for you. And you can go, it's on the village's website if you wanna look at it, but basically the highlights were. Dr. Myers kind of mentioned it with construction, there's 9 new residential subdivisions that are being developed in Mundelein, which is a lot. And there's a lot of industrial, commercial. I think there were something like 12 that are starting to come to life, and some of them were interesting because like on 83, there's a big warehouse that's been built there. So one of the things that in terms of the village is that all these people who are working there, are going to start contributing to some of the economy of the village and so forth. And then there was discussion about the financial situation of the village and where it's at. A little bit of a mention about the school since our board since the taxes for the school, and it's not a village thing. A lot of talk about the, Ward's property, the, I forgot the name, Ivanhoe.
Farms.
Ivanhoe Farm, right, and what's going on and a lot of detail of that, but. So it was an interesting, overview of where the village is at. The only thing that's still left for us in terms of revenue is the Thornton's gas station. You know, what would be a revenue source, but everything else is going on around our district that sits like in the middle of everything.
Is the Thornton's gas station still gonna happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're having, and not just with that. They're having problems with, Commonwealth Edison. And part of the Commonwealth Edison's problems is getting equipment. And then they want, the village wants all, as they do in all projects now, to bury all the lines, you know, any more overhead lines, so that's what the big holdup is right now. But it is starting to move, it's hit doing it for a while.
That presentation you referred to is very thorough. I looked through it a little bit, yeah, there's a lot of details in there, if anyone's interested.
Send out an email to know where to find that.
Pardon?
Would that be possible to just send us a link to where to find that
Sure.
detailed presentation? Dig around on the website just because.
I think there was a link to it in the last village newsletter email,
Yeah, there was.
I
That's
think,
right.
like a week ago.
The village newsletter.
Yeah.
I don't think I get the village.
I'm gonna
newsletter.
send you the link to sign up for the village newsletter.
Awesome. Okay, that'll work.
Okay, next on the agenda is the consent agenda. We'll be voting on the January 24th regular board meeting minutes, the approval of the personnel report, the bill list, and the annual renewal list and FOIA requests. Does anyone have? Yeah. Does anyone have anything they'd like to be removed from the consent agenda before we vote? Okay, I move that the board approves the consent agenda as presented tonight. Second by Mr. Rose. Hang on a second. Secretary Holly and Rose.
I got it. I got it.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Okay, Holly.
Aye.
Try to just remember what I'm supposed to write here. Rose.
Aye.
Carl. Aye. Inske's absent. Gallegos is absent. Fingerhut. Aye. Village here.
Okay, next up is the enthralling description of the job description that Shane presented to us. I move that the Board of Education and Wendell Elementary School District accept the recommendation to approve the following job description as presented. Administrative assistant, facilities, maintenance, construction. Secretary, please call the roll.
Holly.
Aye.
Village here.
Aye.
Fingerhut. Aye. Carl. Aye. Rose.
Aye.
And Gallegos and Inske are absent.
Okay, we're going to prepare to go into executive session. I move that the board goes into the executive session for the sale or purchase of securities, investments, or investment contracts.
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Holly.
Aye.
Fingerhut. Aye. Village here.
Aye.
Carl. Aye. Rose.
Aye.
Inske, Gallegos are absent.
It's 8:48 p.m.
Thank you.
I know. Going again, they come in, they probably pack up and go.
Back, okay. All right, I'd like to call back to order the regular business meeting. Secretary, please call the roll.
Holly.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Carl. Here. Fingerhut here, Bill here.
Here.
And Agagigas and his care absence.
Okay, next item is President's prerogative. Does anyone have any, agenda items they'd like to suggest for future meetings? No? Okay, the one thing that I have on my list for President's prerogative is that, April 4th is the election for Board of Educations, and we will do the changeover meeting in May. Because our April board meeting is like 2 weeks after the election, so we won't have the canvassing done by then, so. But because there will be a new board, that means we will do, you will do new leadership, so. Dr. Meyer suggested that I mention that and tell you to start thinking about, if you want to run for a particular office, or if you think someone would be good for that, and that'll happen after this board finishes their work, and then you'll vote on that at that meeting, so start thinking about that. It's not too far away, so. Okay,
Yeah, but we're looking at May 2nd being a special board meeting just to do the reseeding. And we won't be able to meet the 45-day requirement after the election, before our board meeting's at. So May 2nd is a Tuesday, it's first Tuesday of May. That for our March meeting. Timeline is flexible. Want to keep the same regular board time, fine. Want to start earlier, fine. Well, the meeting is just to do the reseeding, and then I think last time the board did this, you talked through what the different committees were, so people had an idea. There would be one new member, so that's why the purpose would be there, and then be able to have the next meeting when people were to pick committees. So it'd be a short meeting, I guess, is my point. It should be 30 minutes or less.
I hate to say this, but I may have a problem with that night. But I will find out. And let you know tomorrow.
Important part is we just need to make sure which one is your last one, so we can get you cake and celebrate.
Okay, anyone have anything else for the good of the group?
I think you see, just click right over it.
What?
I said the important thing is we know which one.
Sorry, I nodded my head. Thank you. Yes, we need to figure that out. Okay, anything else? Okay, I move that we adjourn.
All in favor?
Anyone opposed? We are adjourned.